Welcome to Inside IT Automation, a ScriptRunner production.
All right, so here is another very special episode of Inside IT Automation. I have the honor to talk to Jeffrey Snover, the inventor of PowerShell. Hello, Jeffrey.
Howdy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for taking the time. This is really exciting, and
My great pleasure.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. And actually, I would like to start to read a small post I saw just 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn from Mike, and I thought that would be a good start for our conversation. I'm just reading it to you. It's been 2 years since I started my new career with and I could not be happier. If you ever wondered if learning PowerShell was worth the time and effort, the answer is yes, in capital. My experience with PowerShell was one of the factors that helped me get hired. My primary role is to develop PowerShell scripts to help automate routine tasks. Automating routine tasks frees up teammates to work on more challenging tasks and also ensures consistency and eliminates human error. Something most companies will appreciate. Learn PowerShell.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Isn't when I read this, this must make you feel just grateful, and right?
It does. It does. The opportunity, the opportunity to have that sort of impact on the world and to help people with their careers. One of the things I love most about going to conferences was the number of people who would come and tell me their stories like that, and how it had helped them become the heroes of their company, how they had gotten promotions and raises. And, one guy just said, it's transformed my life. I've tripled, he said he tripled his salary.
Wow.
And that he was now able to afford to send his daughter to college, and that she would be the first in their family to go to college. And I'm telling you, boy, you hear stories like that. It's just,
this is
just
like,
wonderful.
Yeah, this is
and
like.
Of course, he did that. He did that, but PowerShell played a role. So
obviously, yeah. That is even hearing that is like my hair standing on. It's like, wow.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, and still, PowerShell turns 18 now this year, right? It turns 18.
Old enough to drink in some states.
At least, and in Germany, for sure. Yeah, when you're 18, you're an adult. So awesome. Yeah, so I thought this would be a great starting point. But of course, looking back is also, I think, how it all came to be is an interesting story. And while I was preparing for the conversation with you, I was reading again the Shell of an Idea, and I came across a number of really interesting, some interesting statements which I would like to talk to you about.
Sure.
And the first one is from the foreword, where you say the world has unfortunate habit of giving all the credit to a single hero. Yes. The reality is that big things happen because of teams. So, maybe you can explain a little bit how you were able to manage and get all these right people into your team, working together, creating this great technology.
Well, I'm so glad you started with that, because indeed, it was a team effort. The team delivered PowerShell. I played my role. Honestly, the thing I'm most proud of is that we were able to put together a team of awesome people, and then create a framework so that their unique contributions added up to a coherent whole. That is not at all how things usually happen. So how do we get such a great team? Well, really started off with Daryl Ray. Daryl Ray had already had a great team, right? He had Jim Truer, and he had Bruce Payette. There you go, foundation. I joined that party, and then early on we had some discussions with a group that was doing a provisioning framework in XML. Wasn't very good. Well, but anyway, but these guys were smart and they understood the problems. And one of those guys was Kenneth Hansen. We need that guy. And so then all of a sudden we got this core group of people. And then at some point, we have prototypes and we start to send it out. And there's this one guy at Microsoft who's like giving all this feedback and like really high quality feedback. And so I thought, I got to go have lunch with this guy. And it was Lee Holmes. And so kind of step by step, we started to aggregate all these awesome people. And then there were so many others. I always hesitate to start going down that path of like naming names because there were so many great ones and my memory's not that great. But yeah, those guys, Lee on security, Kevin, Jim Truer and Bruce really own all the credit for the language, Their vision was, they delivered 10x what I was hoping for.
Wow.
Yeah. And Bruce is, and by the way, it was such a wonderful collegial atmosphere. The amount of times, I can say in my career, if I take a look at the highlights, it was those times like getting the 4 or 5 of us in a room at a whiteboard and like, hey, what about this? And really struggling with the hard problem, not going for the easy answer. Like, no, that's not good enough. What's the right answer? And we struggled and struggled and struggled. And I think we came up with some pretty great answers. And of course, Bruce it was an encyclopedic knowledge of languages. And so he would make comments like, well, Snowball had this problem and here's how they addressed it. But then Erlang does it this way. I think we ought to do it that way.
Amazing.
Yeah. Truly.
Okay. Wow. I had a chance to meet him, last year and this year on the PSConf. And I had, even last year, I had dinner with, and his wife was also there. And she said to him, tell the story how Jeffrey got to manage to fire his boss's boss or something like this.
Yes. Did he tell you that story?
No, she was just saying that this happened, but no details. No.
It did. I did not mean to get that guy fired at all. Like, that's not the guy I am. But what had happened was, you get reorganizations, right? So at some point we get this reorganization and we get this boss who's like, it's not a shell. Like, well, okay, but here's why it's a shell. And then it's like, but it's not a shell. I think, okay. And so then all of a sudden, this is going on like a year, and it's just like stalling things. And it's like, at some point, it's like, hey, you know what? I've explained this. We've had this conversation for a year. I've explained it many times, and now you need to tell me what part of it you're missing, or we need to stop having this conversation. And of course, that didn't go very well. And I felt terrible about that. Anyway, so I had my, regular interview, discussions with the head of the organization. And so I said, I was asking for some mentoring. I said, hey, I could use some help here. This isn't working, and I've tried this. I explained the situation. I said, I tried this and I tried that and I tried this, and it just doesn't seem to be working. If you were me, what would you do? And he paused and he got quiet for like a long time. It's been 30, 40 seconds, maybe a minute. It was a long time.
Oh.
Really awkward.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be patient. But if it doesn't resolve itself in 6 weeks, I'd leave. I was like, what? What the hell?
Wow.
He said, no, don't leave the organization. Just leave that team. Like, well, that's not really an option. Anyway, like a couple weeks later, he fired that guy.
Wow.
I felt terrible about that.
Yeah.
That was not at all where it was going. It was like, hey, this is about me. Yeah. I'm being ineffective. I need some help. But the reality is there were some other issues. So
Yeah. So I was reading about it in Shell of an Idea, and there was one thing that really also again caught me, like in one meeting where you say inconsistency is great, and you explained it by, I think you had a binocular or a new classes with. So was this something that you made up like that, or did you plan to use that example?
Yeah, I knew. So this was in the phase where basically they were coming after us. Like everybody wanted to like get rid of PowerShell and Windows architectures. Like, oh, they're going to get us. And one of their big arguments is, well, it's inconsistent. Well, what do you mean inconsistent? Well, when you do local operations, you get an object, and the object is a live object, and it has methods. Okay, it's great, incredibly powerful. But and imagine I'm on like a workstation, and I do remoting to an Exchange server, and then I get the Exchange object back. Okay. Now the only way you can have methods on the object is if you have the code to execute those methods, which would mean if you on that machine you've got Exchange, so you've got the methods. But if you bring that object back over here, you don't run Exchange here, so you don't have those methods. Okay. And so we have deserialized objects. It has all the property bags, but it doesn't have the methods. By the way, we provided a mechanism so that you could get the methods, but somebody had to do extra work. And the reality is nobody's picked that up because it's not that needed. Anyway, so they were going to attack us like inconsistent, and so I knew that, and I was like, oh man, but they're dopes. This is just, it's not the point. And so we have this meeting with Bill. They're going to try and destroy us. And so this Windows architect goes on. It's like, this is a terrible solution. Look at this. It's inconsistent. And he goes and Bill Gates is listening. Is like, got this word Frau. And he's like, yeah. This is not good. And so, well, Jeffrey, what do you have to say for that? I said, inconsistency is great. They were like, what? And so that's the thing, like head on. Like, I'm not taking any of your crap. I'm not going halfway. It's great. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? It's great. I said, you know what? I'm getting old. I'm getting old. The other day, I now need a pair of glasses to see far away, and I need a pair of glasses to see close. It sucks. I said, so I had these two pairs of glasses, right? And so then I'd be looking at something, and then I want to read something. I have to take them out and put another one. Now, then each of those glasses was consistent. Great experience, huh? No, sucked. I get taking on glasses, or I'd be somewhere and I need to read something, but my glasses were somewhere else and I can't find them. So then I got these. These are bifocals. You put these on, and all of a sudden there's a line right in the middle. You're like, what the hell? There's a line. This is for far away. This is for close, and there's a goddamn line. And you know what? In about 30 minutes, that line went away, and now I have one pair of glasses to see far away and to read, and it's wonderful. I love inconsistency, and it's exactly the same thing. Over there, I get the full benefit of the object remoting, the methods, etc., and it's a wonderful world. And over there, I don't have those objects when I bring it back here, but I have the full properties, and so I can do that. Because the alternative was I'd have to go over there and do things, and then that doesn't work. So anyway, that won the day.
Yeah, so I really enjoy when I read this. It's like, and I mean, there are many other stories, and what I was thinking is, I mean, of course, there were all these technical challenges around creating PowerShell, and on top of that, you had to fight all this political, organizational stuff. So how did you stay motivated and positive and go on? So what's the secret?
Yeah, well, first, it was a challenge. I won't deny that. I once had a boss, he framed it very well. He said, the technology challenges are hard enough without all that crap. That was a different company, different context, but it got the essence of it. So how did I keep motivated? Well, again, I truly believed it. It was one of those things that when you saw it and you saw the object pipeline and you saw what you could do, there's no ambiguity. There's a reality to it, and that reality was energizing and exciting, etc. And then, working with that amazing team, like all those folks. Well, you know what? If they're throwing rocks at us, I think I've got them calibrated. I think they're idiots. or like if they don't see it, then there's something wrong. Like they've got it's not an opinion thing, it's a fact thing. And so when they're throwing these rocks, I mean, I think they're not looking at the facts, they're looking at something else. Anyway, so and I just kept going to a number of times I thought about, hey, should I just take this and license it from Microsoft, leave the company, and do a startup? Like thought about that number of times. Thought through, hey, maybe I'll just like start from scratch, and I just kept thinking, well, I could do that, and but at the end of the day, like then my big challenge is going to be, how do I get people to install it? And the difference between it being there and having to install it is world of difference. And so if I could get this shipped in Windows, it would be on hundreds of millions or billions of machines, and tens of millions of people would be using it. And it was really that opportunity to have impact. Because it wasn't about the money, it wasn't about the whatever. It was about the ability to have impact on the world. So so that really helped carry the day.
Which actually happened, right? I mean, there are millions of people benefiting from it. So, but staying in it, I think this is really very inspiring for even if you think, oh no, it's difficult, and you have all these roadblocks.
We would tell each other. Well, I kind of started it, but then we'd all tell each other. Said, these Navy SEALs. A lot of people think that a Navy SEAL is the best soldier in the world. And that's not entirely true. You have to be one of the best soldiers of the world to apply to the Navy SEALs. But then 9 out of 10 of those people get washed out. So what makes a Navy SEAL? And the answer is this. It just turns out that there's a certain class of people that no matter how much pain they're in, no matter how much humiliation, how cold, no matter how frustrated, no matter how what, they'd rather die than quit. Those people are Navy SEALs.
All right.
And what I say is, if you want to do anything truly innovative and ship it in Windows, you got to be like a Navy SEAL. If you just want to +1 some feature, like, oh, now I got round corners. Oh, now I got shades. Like, that's fine. You're going to have a very easy life. I increased the dot resolution. Easy life. But if you want to do something revolutionary, guess what? This is going to ship on billions of machines. And people, and if it's wrong, it's going to be wrong times billions. So there are going to be people, a lot of people, who are going to make sure, like, they could put you through the ringer to make sure that it's not going to be wrong, that you're not going to have, you had a positive effect, could have gone the other way. And all those people that attacked us, etc., in their heart, well, I'll say this, I'll put it in its most positive light. And their positive role was that they were making sure we weren't going to screw up billions of machines. So anyway, that helped.
Yeah, great story. And finally, it got into Windows, right? It got into Exchange. It got into Windows. So life is good. And then I also read that someone, I don't know who said it, like without PowerShell, there would not be, Microsoft would not go to the cloud. Would not have the technology to go to the cloud, right?
Yeah, I had lunch with Perry Clark. So Perry is the manager of the Office Substrate Exchange, and he told me that. It's something he says, well, you realize that PowerShell is the technology that allowed Microsoft to go to the cloud. Taken aback, it's like, haven't heard that before. Connect those dots for me. He says, well, Exchange led Microsoft to the cloud, full stop. We're many years ahead of Azure. We encountered all the problems. We solved all those problems. And then Azure kind of came behind us. It says, and we never would have been able to do it without PowerShell. Now, Exchange was our first and best customer. And they, automated everything. And so then when they say, well, okay, now I got to stand up this server. Well, actually, I don't need to stand up a server. I need to stand up 100 servers. Had they stayed with the GUI, click, 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 never would have done it. And guess what? Then there's operations. Again, click, click, click. never would have got the things done. So by being able to script everything, being able to automate everything, being able to see, oh, hey, I did this and it's not quite right. Change this. Do it. No, it's not quite right. Change it. Do it. Okay, that's right. Now do it at scale. Was the technology that allowed them to implement was originally BPAWS and then Office 365. So like, wow, they owe me more money.
Exactly. That's awesome.
He said, I'll buy you lunch. Okay.
Well, that's a start, right? Oh, that's great. And I think this also kind of fits into this. You had these different principles, and one of them was the principle of 2 a.m. where you said, okay, you have to have some fallback scenarios if someone to avoid people are doing maybe something terribly wrong, because PowerShell is obviously powerful, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So basically it's like, something's wrong and you're woken up. I was sleeping on the data center floor, got woken up at this hospital, like, you got to go fix the computer. And I was like, and the database had been corrupted. And so I wrote a script to tie everything together. And I'm trying to see whether I should run the script or not. And I'm looking at these records and I see this one record, and it's half a record. And it says gunshot wound abdomen. I'm thinking, oh my God, there's some guy out there with a bullet in his stomach. And I only got half of his medical record, and I got to find the other half and stitch it together. I'm not at my best, and this really matters. And it's like, wow. And so then I thought about, okay, well, now imagine that scenario, and you say, is the script right? And it's a Perl script. You're doomed. You're doomed. You can write Perl scripts, but you can't read a Perl script. You say, oh, could you read this? No. Oh, let's just write a new one. And so I said, I want a tool for that moment, right? And that's why it's verbose, right? When it's verbose, it's your friend and it's your enemy. Look, if you're just hacking around at the command line, PowerShell can be very terse, right? You have aliases, etc. You can be as terse as you like. But when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're going to try to find this database record stitched together, you want verbosity to know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. Also, like, again, it might go wrong. So you want to be able to say anything that has a side effect on the system, say minus what if, tells you what it would have done, but doesn't do it. Or I'm not sure if that's right yet or not. So you say dash confirm, and it asks you this, yes, no. So those are the principles. Like, I really wanted to help that poor admin. Like, look, what's the difference between a hero and somebody who gets fired, right? It's like getting it right. Tense moment at that night, I got it right. I was a hero. If I got it wrong, never found the second half of that, I would have gotten fired, right? So it matters. And so I wanted to give a tool that maximized the probability these people could be successful when they were not at their best. Yes. That's often when it matters the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what if, because it's just a safety net, right? Before I'm doing something, I better check what would happen if I actually run that, right?
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, absolutely. And so is this like this principles? Was this how then the sacred vow came to be? Was this part of that as well, or?
Well, no, actually, that came from. Let's see. Well, kind of two things. Number one is I just seen this terrible anti-pattern of Microsoft releasing a technology and then getting excited about something new and not finishing it, right? So I remember, what the heck was it? Well, there was WMI, and then there was this effort to SDM, DSM, something, just dynamic systems modeling. It's like, hey, no, don't do that. We got WMI. Let's just stay. No, that's old. We got to do something new. It's like, no, we got to understand. People are just still learning it. There's some guy out there, I guarantee you, some guy said, hey, boss, we got to go with Windows. Well, why? oh, WMI, and look at what WMI can do. Okay. And so then they're on Windows. And now all of a sudden you're going to go and say, oh, WMI is old. We're not doing it. We're doing something new. That guy's going to look like an idiot, to his boss.
Yeah,
So you're after the next big keynote. And I remember at some point we had released one version of Windows, and I'm in my boss's office and like, okay, well, what are we going to do for the next version? I said, oh, we got to complete this, and we got to complete that, and we got to extend this. And he's like, no. We got to have something that pops. I said, well, how about this for pops? Now it frickin' works. He says, no. You got to have some. You can't say that at a keynote. You have to have something that pops. It's like, oh my. Anyway, so there was this fecklessness to things as people pursued winning the keynote as opposed to solving the problem. And I was all about solving the problem. Now, the second thing was, look, I knew admin's hair was on fire, right? Tough job. The last thing in the world they want to do is to learn some new technology. So what I had to do is I say, that's totally rational. And yet I believe that I can help them by doing this. And so the only way we can do that is to say, hey, I'm not going to go do that feckless thing, right? I'm not going to, chase some new thing. Wherever we find a new problem, we're not going to build a new tool. We're going to try and extend this as much as possible. And by the way, so then that related personally, I think in the book, they told the story about, as we were getting up to version 1, my manager comes and says, well, what are you going to do next? I said, well, we haven't shipped. I said, yeah, but after you ship, what are you going to do next? I said, well, there's more to do. And like, well, it's going to hurt your career if you're a senior guy and you got to do something new. You can't just keep doing this. It's like, go away. And so I did version 2. And then like you're getting version 2's coming out the door. And they're like, okay, well, now what are you going to do? What's next? You got to have some big new thing. It's like, no, it's not done. We got to keep doing this. It's, there's a lot to be done. They're like, it's going to hurt you. And guess what? It did. Until it didn't, right? By sticking with it, by delivering. I don't know if you've ever seen the Monad Manifesto, but it was shocking. We had written that, and it wasn't like something, we kept on our side and like, okay, where are we? Track. No, we didn't. Everybody got it in their head, and then we executed, and we'd give it to new people as they came on board, so they'd get socialized. But then it was like a long time later that I said, hey, whatever happened to that document? Pulled it out, and it's like, holy schmoly. It was incredibly accurate about what needed to be done. So here's where we got in version 1. Then we got to this level in version 2. And it was version 4 before we really kind of like completed the scenario. There's still a lot more work to be done, but we finally kind of fleshed it all out. And then my career did very well after that. So
yeah.
But before that, they were right. It was hurting me.
Yeah, but you stick to it, and well, you succeeded at the end, right? I mean, that's
well, I think
awesome story.
I don't know that it works. You never underestimate the role of luck in all of this, right? So there's a lot of luck involved. But I like to tell myself that, this is the benefit of like focusing in on the customer, focusing in on what's real, not splashy, but real, what's real value. How can you really solve the problem? How can you really get things done? I think the reality is there was a lot of luck involved too.
Yeah, but I think this luck doesn't come to anybody, right? So, I mean, you have to still work on it. And it's, I think there's a life lesson in that for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, okay, now we are... now we are at PowerShell 7, PowerShell got open sourced and things like that. So are you still following the things that happened with PowerShell and what the team does?
From afar, not as close. We had moved after quite a bit. I became chief architect of Windows Server, and then I went to Office, and I would continue to as chief architect of Server. I stayed very involved. Then when I went over to Office, less so. I'd have one-on-ones with the team, but really kind of shifted more to an advisor role. And now I'm a cheerleader,
which is also important, right? I mean,
yes.
So if you look back, are there any things where you say, oh, okay, when we started to build that, maybe that would be we should have done something different, or should we have put in something else that maybe would be beneficial for people today? Is there anything in that regard?
Yep. Oh yeah, I got lots of them. Lots of them. Things that we thought were going to be important that weren't, as things we, wish we had gotten in sooner than lot. Oh, it's one of my biggest regrets was workflow. Workflow. Lee Holmes had come together with a really good design for workflow. And I said, no, why not? So, well, there's this workflow engine, and as part of the common engineering criteria, like if you have a workflow engine, if you have a workflow problem, the guidance is to use their workflow engine. Okay. And I've looked at it and it's pretty good. So we got to go with that. That was the wrong call. And the reason it was the wrong call was twofold. One, and was a technological one, which is the way they had executed. The idea was, Jeffrey, if you develop a workflow engine, you're going to go out to the community and you're going to say, hey, Intel, hey, Dell, hey, whoever, Oracle, etc., write these components to fit into my workflow engine. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Right. Now, other people are going to do workflow engines, right? So there's Office and there's these teams and then Biz Talk or whatever. They're going to go to the same teams and say, hey, we want you to write our workflow engines. And they're going to look at it and say, wait, I got 7 asks for workflow products at Microsoft. What the hell? So instead, we're going to have a common engine, and then you go and we're going to get them to do once, and then everybody's going to benefit. Classic platform play. Makes a ton of sense. What I had missed was that the way they architected, so great story, but then the architecture, the tasks, the things that people need to write were really not decoupled, were not coupled to the engine. They were coupled to the engine and the environment. So that value proposition never really played out. And they weren't serious about doing it and a number of other things. And so we ended up with a non-optimal, had that value proposition been true, the value that it would have brought would have overcome any, like, hey, it's not optimal for PowerShell, but it's optimal because there's so much value, it works anyway. And so anyway, that was a bad call. Feel bad about that.
Okay.
And there's quite a few others.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing, how it went out and how it is, it's as I said, millions of people using it, and it's. I would like to change gear a little bit and talk about AI. Of course, when you talk about AI, I think in one interview, I don't know, it's a few years ago, I think, where you said when they were asking you about AI, and you said we're at the beginning of the beginning of the beginning of AI. So would you say that's still true? How do you
I'd
see
remove one of those? I'd remove one of those beginnings.
Okay.
I was just having this conversation with a guy a month ago, senior guy, and he was having one of those like, hey, what do I do with my life? What do I do with my career moments? And I said, well, how long are you going to be in the industry? So now I'll give the advice to everybody. How long are you going to be in the industry? And I said, well, blah. So, okay, the only interesting answer is less than 5 years or more than 5 years. It's more than 5 years. I said, okay, then no matter what you do, don't take another job that isn't involved with AI. And he says, well, I don't know anything about AI, blah, 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 blah. I said, here's the thing you need to understand. We're at the beginning of AI. If you track what's going on in this space, it is changing so rapidly that if someone was completely knowledgeable right now, and then you have no knowledge, in 18 months, you're both going to be about equal. Because it's so much, it's all up ahead, right? And everything that those people know is like, word to vec. Okay, interesting, not used anymore. There's just all these things. There's like, yeah, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Been replaced with this, been replaced with that. And that's just going to keep happening. So, and this will be for a while, right? There's no need to rush, but, I wouldn't go too many years before you jumped on that bandwagon, if you're going to be in the industry for more than 5 years, that you can jump on, and it changes so quickly that you will rapidly be an expert on the current state of knowledge. But then, it's like jumping on the tiger. You got to keep up with it, because if you okay, now I got it, I'm going to stop working my ass off, it's going to blow past you. Really changing that quickly. It's exciting.
So I wanted to ask you, so what is the most exciting thing for you in AI? Are you using it in your daily work, daily business? Is it part of your routines?
I'm exploring it. Yep. I'm not sure how much of that I can talk about, but basically it's, how do we bring AI operations to some of the things that we do? Yeah. And so again, AI is a wide set of things. I think most people are excited about these large language models. Yeah. And I'm just convinced that so many people are getting it wrong. And what does that mean? And that is, these are amazing tools, and they can trick you into thinking that they do things that they don't. Okay. So seen properly, these large language models will be a component of a tool chain. They aren't a tool in and of themselves, in my opinion, right? They're not an effective, good tool in and of themselves, right? So concretely, I think large language models are awesome at like input and output, but then the actual core processing has to be something else, right? So a large language model doing math, you know what? You're better off saying, hey, this looks like a math expression. You can express it in lots of different ways, but then I'm going to hand it off to a calculator, and then you can ask for it output however you want. So it's good for input and it's good for output, but then let's use the calculator. Or there's this example, famous one about you can ask these large language models, hey, who's Tom Cruise's mother? Let's say it's Susan Smith, right? And then you say, who's Susan Smith's children? And it won't answer the question. And why is that? And what that has to do with the feed-forward nature of these statistical models, right? All the articles are about Tom Cruise, and so they say Tom Cruise's mother. There are no articles about Susan Smith. It's never Susan Smith's children are this. And so there's this directionality to it. But if instead you say, hey, there's some entities here, and then you go to a knowledge graph, like Google has this amazing knowledge, graph. So when you do a search, it's not the old search of just like some big index. It's like, oh, hey, I know what you're talking about because I know what the entities are, I know what the relationships are, et cetera. That's a true knowledge graph. And so by putting a natural language interface in front of this, and then on the output of it, and then leveraging that knowledge graph, that's when it's going to really get exciting. Well, it is exciting. That's when it really is grounded and works well.
Yeah. Awesome. And
I'm wildly excited about, as you know, I'm a big fan of material science. And in material science, there's all sorts of wonderful work being done around these self-driving labs, right? Where a combination of generic AI, generative AI, robotics, et cetera, producing self-driving labs. You'll take something where you have to have a critical mass of data to begin with. But then from there, you begin to say, hey, let's use a generative model to predict the property space of a set of materials, and then automatically synthesize those things, and then robotically then go analyze those to get new data points to feed the model. And then that gives you feedback on your predictions. And so then you do the next round of predictions, and then you iterate. We have produced some stellar like light emitting materials from that process, but it's wildly optimistic.
Wow.
So it basically accelerates things. Microsoft, Google has done some wonderful work in this place, but Microsoft nailed the marketing message. Microsoft did something different, similar, but very different around lithium batteries, right? Great work. They nailed the messaging. They said, with these new approaches, the next 250 years of chemistry is going to happen in the next 25.
Wow, that's a strong message.
It is a strong message, and I think it's right. You know, what does that mean? So one, it is a step function in change. I mean, it is a revolution, but it's not a revolution in the next 25 months. It's going to be 25 years, but it will. I mean, our grandkids are going to live completely different. But look, the world is made out of materials, right? There's a lot of, like, if you could just decrease the friction, tribology, right? The study of friction. If you could just decrease the friction by 1%, it would add trillions of dollars to the world economy. How could that be? Well, friction is what caused wear, which causes replacements, etc., and excess heat causing more, is just a ton of things. So
yeah, we're living in exciting times.
it is.
So what would you envision for PowerShell and AI? Do you see any combinations and things where I think, wow, maybe it's already there, or things that you think that
I haven't been tracking. Doug Fink's been doing some amazing work in this space, but I haven't really been tracking how he's been doing it and what he's been doing. But I will tell you this. So number one is I was always optimistic about PowerShell's regularity, right? So kind of tried to back to that. Hey, learn PowerShell, and it'll be the best investment you ever made in your career. Part of this was, let's standardize as much as possible, so that there was regular, and you learn it, and then the next thing you can do is just like the previous one. And I believe that that's very conducive to machine language, or it's to AI. That it's easier to learn. It's basically consistency improves AI. And then the second thing is, and this one I'd love to see. My strong hypothesis: these large language models have been doing very good on programming. Very good. Well, they don't. Right? And so then the question is, well, what's that? Is it, well, they're very good at little islands, and then the trick is just to make the islands bigger and bigger, or what? And we don't know, but I have a suspicion that because they're working at the source code level, that there's only so far you can go. And I believe, my hypothesis is that this whole area could be transformed by, instead of doing AI at the source code level, you do it at the AST level, the abstract syntax tree.
Okay.
Right? Because again, what that does is it reduces the variability. It talks about the true structure, like really what this is. X isn't just X. X is a variable, and now that variable is here, 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 here. And so your ability to extract patterns, I think, would be orders of magnitude greater if you could work at the AST level than at the source code level. And of course, one of the revolutions was that PowerShell has an AST. Thank you. I forget whether it was Bruce by himself or Jason Shirk by himself, or the combination. Those two guys did a fantastic job. Again, it's not your dad's script. PowerShell has a hotspot compiler. A hotspot compiler for a shell. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
And anyway, but the reason we did that is because we've got an AST.
And actually, I just had we had with our PowerShell user group, we had a guy, Christian, coming, doing a session about optimizing performance, and he actually he went down to AST, analyzing things, finding out what's happening, and it was amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing. It's the nice thing about this. You can really go deep with PowerShell. Some of these tools, there's only so far you can go, and then I got it. Like spent 3 weeks. Now I'm a world expert. That's not the case with PowerShell.
Yeah.
Learn and learn and learn.
Yeah. Which is a good thing, right? I mean, it's easy to start, but you can go a long way to learn all kinds of different things.
Yes.
Around PowerShell. Awesome. So this is maybe brings me to the last question, which would be: is there any chance to see Jeffrey Snover in one of the future PowerShell community events? Is there a possibility for that?
Yeah, last year, so it's not involved in my work, so work won't send me. But last year, I took my vacation. I went to the Material Research Society conference here in
Oh,
Boston.
wow.
So,
Okay.
the reality is I'm just a nerd, and so depending on how much vacation time I have, I might take a vacation, come to one, and just again be a cheerleader and a
Yeah.
spectator because they're great events. So yeah, I actually thought about it.
Okay. Wow. That's kind of good news, I would say, because I mean the community would be more than happy, right? I mean, we can see you commenting on Twitter, which I still call Twitter, and other
Me too.
platforms. Okay, cool. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Jeffrey, for all the insights, all the stories, and thanks for inventing PowerShell with this great group of people that you had around.
Yes. Well, contributing to the team that delivered
Yeah.
PowerShell. Yeah.
So again, Jeffrey, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for the great chat. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so
And
much.
bye-bye. See you next time.